Afternoon. My name is Sarah Weiner, Program Manager of Education and Practice at the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health. Thank you for joining us for today's ASPPH Presents webinar, Graduate School Financial Aid for Beginners. Today's webinar will be 1 hour in length, which will include plenty of time for questions and answer at the end of the webinar. This webinar is part of the 2016 ASPPH Presents monthly series, which has been designed as a service to CEPH-accredited ASPPH member schools and programs of public health. The webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the ASPPH website in the archived webinar section soon. Additionally, this webinar has been approved for 1 hour of CPH continuing education credit. A few housekeeping items of note: while you are in listen-only mode and your lines have been muted, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the question box. We will address your questions at the end of the presentation. I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, Joseph Korevec. Dr. Korevec is the Senior Director of Admission and Financial Aid at the Columbia University Mailman School of Public Health. He has focused on enrollment management issues and the strategic use of financial aid to make private institutions an affordable option. Prior to joining Columbia, he worked for Fordham University's Graduate School of Education. Dr. Korevec has been in graduate admission since 1996 and in higher education since 1989. He holds a master's degree in business administration from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and a PhD in educational administration from Fordham University. Prior to his career in higher education, he worked as a management consultant for a diverse range of clients in the insurance, utility, manufacturing, and food industries. Welcome, Dr. Korevec.
Hey, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a little bit about the basics of financial aid and then some of the tips and tricks on looking for outside funding sources, and we'll actually go through some links. So hopefully you will get all the information you need. So let me move on to the next slide. Okay. There we go. Okay. So financial aid is like the lottery. You got to be in it to win it. So don't automatically assume that you're not eligible for anything. And a lot of students do that. Let me give you my example. So I have a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and a PhD, and only one of those is from a public institution. The rest are from private institutions, and I only took out $5,000 in loans. Now, I don't consider myself anything special in any way. And I know my team tells me that it was because I went to school back in the Stone Age when it was $25 a semester, but I would say that it was probably about $175,000 worth of educational expenses, and I only needed to take out $5,000 in loans. So let me also divide financial aid, how it works between people who are going for their doctorate, their PhD, or people who are going for their master's. So typically at the doctoral level, because it's so competitive, if you get in, the institution will take care of you. And by that I mean either full tuition or tuition plus stipend. Okay? In our particular case here at Columbia, we have about 400 applications for about 30 spots. So the hardest part is getting in. Now on the master's level, in most cases, most institutions will not pay for 100% for you. In fact, in a lot of cases, that you have to finance it heavy yourself. And that includes whether you go for an MPH, an MS, an MHA, or even an MBA or an MSW. You're going to have to figure out funding on your own. So typically, institutions will provide you with aid based on 3 factors: merit, as evidenced by your grade point average and your test scores; need, as evidenced by your estimated family contribution on the FAFSA; and mission, which is either evidence of or an intention to serving underserved populations in the field of public health. The more of those things you have, the more likely you are to get something, the bigger the package. Okay? So if institutions, the other types of institution aid that they have are scholarships and grants. This is what I call free money. Teaching assistantships and research assistantships. So with teaching assistantships and research assistantships, first of all, the research assistantships are tied to grants in many cases, so only U.S. citizens and permanent residents are eligible for research assistantships. Teaching assistantships, in a lot of cases, those and the research assistantships are for second-year students in a 2-year program. So usually in your first year, you're going to have to figure out the funding yourself. and then in the second year, you can get a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship position. But that's typically the types of funding sources that you're going to get from an institution. Okay. Now, deadline dates are really important. In most cases, you're going to have to require to fill out the FAFSA, and what you have to remember is that deadline date, the financial aid deadline date, is actually more important than an application deadline date. When I took over here at Columbia 9 years ago, students would wait until after they got accepted and then filed their FAFSA and worry about how to pay for it. Well, we send our notifications out in February and then again in March, and then it's rolling after that. So for those folks who didn't get accepted until the March batch, they didn't get their FAFSA in until middle to late March, and by then, even though they were eligible for the institutional funding I had, we had already allocated all the funds, so it was too late. So you need to make sure you get the FAFSA in. Now this year, the FAFSA is already available. It's available as of early October, so you can actually start filing it now. What you would do is you would put in your prior year's taxes. So not the 2016 taxes, but your 2015. And that's okay. We can use that now. The way the FAFSA is working, we can use that now to determine your need. Also, if you want to be eligible for any federal aid, or in most cases need-based aid at your institution, you will have to make sure that you have your Social Security number on your SOFIS application. I know a lot of people don't like to put that down, but you really need to have a Social Security number, otherwise we can't match it up with the FAFSA information. If you don't provide it to us on your SOFIS application, then we're going to have to request it individually, and you'll have to submit it to us. Okay? So, if an institution is not going to provide you with 100% financing, what do you need to do? You need to look for outside funding sources. Now, the keys to outside funding source strategies are their deadline dates are September, October, November, some in December. So the problem is most application deadline dates are December or January. So if you wait until after you've applied to start looking for outside funding sources, you've already missed out on a year of opportunity. So you really need to start searching for outside funding sources at the same time that you're getting your application materials together. You need to search often. The reason why I say you need to search often is because things become available, and there might be a short window of opportunity. So I'll give you an example. We had an outside agency that called me the second week of August. This was a couple years ago, second week of August, and they said they were looking for a female New York resident who was interested in aging issues. Did I know of anybody? So what I did was we sent an email out to our accepted students, and I said, if you're interested, you need to apply. Now, we had 4 people that applied. They had a week to turn in their application, and 2 of those people went from getting nothing to full rides, okay? Now, what this is an example of is there are outside agencies, and it's the end of their fiscal year, and they have money that they need to give away, and if they don't give it away, they're going to lose it. So it becomes available. It becomes available for a short span of time, and then it's gone. So that's why I say you need to search often. Now, the other thing I'll recommend is this, is for those of you who have already done this process, it can be very frustrating and overwhelming because there's a lot of information out there. There is a lot of dead ends that you're going to hit. You're going to wonder if completing the application is worth the effort. So what I tell people is this, is I liken it to when I was with my dissertation mentor. So my dissertation mentor would follow me down the hall and ask me what I'm going to give him something, and I told him, you know, I'm looking for some time where I can sit down and write, and you know, I'll get to it, but I'm very busy. So he said, what you need to do is you need to spend 15 minutes a day working on your dissertation. And I looked at him and I said, if I only spend 15 minutes a day working on my dissertation, I'll be dead before it's done. He said, try it, see what happens. So I tried it, and I took my Saturdays off so I could be with family and stuff. But within 6 months, I had the dissertation done. I would say utilize that same strategy when you're looking for financial aid sources, okay? Because life does not give you 2-hour blocks of time, but life gives you 15 minutes, okay? 15 minutes a day. So spend 15 minutes a day. You'll be surprised at what happens, because 15 minutes can turn into an hour pretty quick, especially if you're finding some interesting things. The difference between your first choice school and your second choice school is going to come down between $15,000 and $30,000. And so it depends on how badly you want to go to your first choice school. Okay? So 15 minutes a day, everybody can do that. Search for related sources and vary your search terminology. So this is typically what I see. So if someone is interested in epi, they'll type in the word epi, and it either comes up or it doesn't come up. Okay? And then I said, okay, that's a good way to start. But how about if you are if you're interested in infectious disease or chronic disease or something like that? I said those all fall in there. Okay. Then I tell people that I was looking on our ASPPH site, our School of International and Public Affairs, typed in public health there, came up with 3 pages of public health scholarships. Now, in many cases, those were policy related, but so what? Ultimately, public health is all about policy, because policy is going to impact, have the biggest impact. So it doesn't matter whether you're in that school or our school. These are outside funding sources. They don't care. Also in there, I noticed a bunch of categories. So they have women, they have minorities, but one of the things they had in there is social justice and human rights. So I told people, I said, okay, well, if you said you were interested in epi, why would you search under human rights or social justice? And I said to them, wouldn't you also be interested in those as a public health epi student? So they don't care whether you're epi or whether you're behavioral sciences. It doesn't matter. Okay, those things are all interrelated. So start out very specific and then broaden your search. Okay. The other thing about it is if you're interested in one of behavioral sciences, okay, so public health behavioral, we call it socio-medical sciences here, but it's called behavioral and social sciences. In those particular cases, look under Graduate School of Arts and Sciences in their psychology, sociology, or anthropology areas, or political science, or history, or ethics, okay? They don't care whether you're going to a Graduate School of Arts and Sciences or whether you're a public health focus, okay? They're outside funding sources, so look at those types of things. You all belong to organizations, so check with them, okay? Tell them that you are going to go to the School of Public Health and you are going to change the world. Could they fund you, okay? I know with our executive folks, they tend to do a very good job of talking to their bosses, and I always tell people, have the conversation. It may not be listed as something specific in your benefits package, but talk to them, tell them how the education that you're going to get, the MPH that you're going to get, is going to make you a better employee, and you're going to add value to the organization, okay? So any of those types of things. And then I tell people, expand your network. Tell your friends, family, relatives, enemies, whoever, that you could use a little help, and have them help you. So I'll give you an example. My niece wanted to go to medical school, and her parents said, you're an adult, figure it out yourself. So she said, what she did was she told her friends and family about that, if you hear about anything, let me know. So one of her friends about a month later told her about a Kiwanis Club scholarship. She was one of 4 people that applied, and for those people who know stats, those are darn good odds for a scholarship. And she finished up Tulane Medical School partly on a scholarship, on a Kiwanis Club scholarship that one of her friends told her about. Okay, so you got to let people know so that they, somebody knows somebody who knows something. Okay, I'll give you another example. My nephew, they call me Uncle Money because I know how to find the money. My nephew is from the Midwest. I'm originally from the Chicago area. He got accepted to USC Law School. And for those folks who are from the California area, if you're a California resident and going to a California state school, it's pretty reasonable. If you're not, they charge you 5 times price. So he said, Uncle Joe, that's a little expensive. Is there anything I can do? I said, well, why don't you ask? It doesn't hurt to ask. So he spent about 2 hours writing a letter to the dean, and he told the dean that when he was undergrad, he did a lot of volunteers and volunteer work and stuff like that, and so he wasn't able to save a lot of money for graduate school. And when he graduates from law school, he plans to do pro bono work. He's not going to go into corporate law. So they said that, so he spent about 2 hours doing that, and he ended up getting $20,000. Now, they pay me well at Columbia, but they do not give me $20,000 for 2 hours worth of work. So, like I said, it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst they can do is say no. I tell people, do not be afraid to beg if you have to. Okay? So, that gives you kind of the generic strategies involved in looking for outside funding sources. Also, the other thing that I find, because I also work at admissions of financial aid, is when you bring food, when you offer food, they will come. So feel free to have some food, invite your friends, give them a link to take a look at, tell them generically what you're looking for, and if they find you a $20,000 scholarship, you can tell them that you'll take them out for a nice dinner. So, you know, get your friends and family to help as well, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple of these sources, and I'm going to actually walk you through what it is that you need to do, okay, just so that you can visualize what's happening. So the first one I'm going to go through is this. The first place to check is the institution or institutions where you're planning on applying or where you would like to attend. Go to their website first. They are going to have outside funding sources. Typically, those outside funding sources are sources that their students themselves have been successful at obtaining, okay? So in this particular case, this is ours. So for those folks who want to come to Columbia, and it takes a few minutes to load up, okay? So there's a whole list of them here, okay? And in many cases, you either meet the criteria or you don't, okay? But these are outside funding sources that our students have been successful at getting, and what I do is I update this all the time, okay? So anytime something comes up, I just add it to there, okay? And you can see some of them are very specific. So we have gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, Hebrew Free Loan Society. Some of them are offered by organizations like Pfizer, Hispanic Scholarship Fund, Lehman Scholarship for those folks. It is for any international students around it. That's for folks who are from Brazil. So there's a lot of different opportunities there, okay? Close that up. The next one we're going to do is, the next way to look is to look based on your research interests, okay? So some of this funding sources will be to fund your research, but also it can provide you with some various funding sources, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to grants.gov. That's a great place to go. And I'm going to type in a keyword. So what I'm going to do is, let's just say maternal care. Okay, I'm just picking something. Okay, and when we look at this, so there are 416 results. So this is for folks who are doing research in the area of maternal care. You can type in whatever you want there, okay? And then you take a look at these things and see which ones may be applicable or not, okay? So this is another way to search, is based on your research interests, okay? Okay. Also on that site that I just went to, not the grants.gov, but the Columbia one, we do have, because we here at Columbia, we have a research center that helps students and faculty get outside funding and grants, and they actually can kind of give you like a strategy on how likely you are to get some of those grants, because some of them obviously are much more competitive than others. Okay? Okay, now we're going to another site. So now this is based on who you are as an individual, how you define yourself as an individual. And it's coming up. Okay, so let me ask you this. before I go into this. One time I was looking for folks. I was looking for a scholarship in some area. I said, there's no way they're going to give this scholarship for this. And I'm assuming with all the people that we have on that there's probably a couple of you that are lucky enough to fall into this category. So I'm an identical twin. So I typed in scholarships for twins, 5 pages of scholarships for twins. Now think about it. I don't have to be smart. I don't have to be talented. I don't have to be good looking, and they're going to give me money. Okay? And now in a lot of cases it was scholarships for twins who wanted to do research on that population. But so what? Let's say I wanted to do HIV or cancer research, and I had to focus on the twin population so that they would pay for it. Who cares? In fact, if I would have known that there were scholarships for twins, I wouldn't have taken out the $5,000 in loans that I had. So anyways, we're going to go up here by student type, and I'll show you a little bit what I mean. So you can see adult students, age specific, at risk. If you're a former Boy or Girl Scout, if you're disabled, if you are a first generation, if you're a foster child, if you belong to a fraternity or sorority, if you have certain health conditions, if you are left-handed, if you're low income, if you're a beauty pageant winner, a former beauty pageant winner, if you are tall, if you are a twin, if you're a vegan, all those things. And when you think about it, it's like this is how you define yourself as an individual, and they're going to give you money for that. Okay? So this is another way to look for scholarships based on how you define yourself. Okay? Okay. Then we're going to go into, I'm going to go into the SEPA site. So I'll show you that one too. And this is what I was talking about, looking for related sites. It's coming up, coming up. Okay. So once again, this is related. So we are going to do an advanced search. Okay, you see the categories here. So let's do. Hold on, I'm moving too fast. Let's do women. Okay, and apply. Okay, and as you can see, there are 17. So here's Alpha Epsilon Phi Foundation, University Women, American International Fellowships. We've got Canadian scholarships. We've got gay scholarships. We've got all sorts of Italian American women scholarships, women of color. So as you can see, a bunch of different things. Okay. Then let's go back up to the top again, and let's take that thing out. Okay. Oops, we're down further. Okay, we'll unclick that one, and let's do human rights. Okay, why not? Everybody's interested in human rights that's in public health. Okay, we apply. And then we scroll down, and there you go. So with Hispanic Caucus, you've got Episcopal Church, so now you've got, religious affiliations, once again, gay scholarships, Humane Studies Fellowships, Japanese American, okay, 9/11 Scholarship, Jewish Community, Latina Scholarship. So all of these different scholarships depend on how you look for things. So like I said, there's human rights, there's social justice. So those are other ways to approach your search strategy. Okay, we'll close that one. Now then here, and once again, I'm dating myself. This is the top 99 Twitter sites for financial aid. So once again, I'm old school. So this is apparently where the kids go. Now I'll call them kids only because they're a little younger than me. The kids go for, these are what they consider the hottest spots to find outside funding or to find financial aid. Okay, some of these obviously pertain to undergraduates more than grad, but there are 99 of them here. So there's all sorts of things. Okay, and different ways to search and stuff like that. So like I said, this is where your friends come in handy. They can help you look at these things, and like I said, if you provide them with food, they'll come. Okay, so 99 Twitter sites, lots to look at there. Okay, now the next one here is, this one is ASPPH website. So what I did was, I'm one of the people that handles both admissions and financial aid. I said, why are we making students look at multiple sites and all over the place for outside funding sources? Why don't we do something to combine them all into one area? So what I did was, I had all of the outside, all the accredited schools of public health send me their links to their outside funding sources, and I had a grad assistant work during the summer and consolidate them into one area. So there are about 150 different sources here, and I don't see it, doesn't seem to be coming up. So let me just try it again. It worked earlier. There we go. It's coming. Okay, so it gives you some of the same tips that I talked to you about before. Okay, do your research and stuff like that, expand your network. And then it's got the various different categories down here. So we can do minority and underserved populations. So here's general, general ones, women, okay, African American, so on, American Indian. So you know, a lot of different things there. Let's go back up here. Okay. Oh, come on. Oops. Okay. Okay, we can do. Okay, let's close that one. Applicant-specific criteria. So medical history, volunteer activity, community involvement. So depending on some of your background, military status, individual characteristics. Okay, you either meet the characteristics or not. Okay, so a lot of different areas of study. So health disparities, science, STEM fields, humanities, behavioral science, and social sciences. So a lot of different. Now these ones are the real gems because, like I mentioned, these come from accredited schools' websites. So this is what they are telling, this is where they're telling their applicants and students to go look for outside funding sources. And they do that because those students have been successful at gaining access to money from these groups. So this is a great place to start if you're kind of overwhelmed by the whole thing. There's 150 on here, and this is a great place to start. Okay. So let's move on to, okay, go to the next page. Oh, hold on. Okay, so also every state has outside funding sources. So let's just click on that. So depending on what state you're from, there may be what's it called. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Illinois. And then you can do a search on this stuff. Okay. Search on college funds or whatever. Okay. Students, parents. Okay. So there's a lot of different resources here. But this is based on the state that you're from, okay? So feel free to do those types of things. Now, in some cases, they are specific to, in some cases, you have to go to school in that state, be a resident of the state, and go to school. But in some cases, it doesn't matter where you're going, okay? Then I also have outside funding source search engines, okay? So a lot of different things, a lot of different, now those are more generic. So I would say utilize the stuff that I had on the prior page first because those are much more tailored, but these are the other search engines. I would also say never, ever pay anyone or send in money to have someone help you do this, okay? It's probably a scam, so don't pay anybody to move it, to help you with this. You can, like I said, unless you're going to give your friends some money. But you should not pay an organization to do this. There's something probably wrong with that. Now, loan repayment. So let me go through this, and I approach this from a very conservative perspective because I want to make sure that you do not get yourself into too much debt. So we have what we call the loan forgiveness program. Okay? Now, the first time it will hit is in 2017 because they told folks about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, they told folks that if you made payments over 10 years, that they would forgive the rest of your loan. Okay? So students, especially students that have done medical degrees and other professional degrees and MPHs and master's degrees, they racked up lots and lots of debt in the hopes that the government is going to waive that debt. So let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, it has not hit yet, so I'm not sure where that money is coming from, okay? And they're talking about it being a huge amount of money, okay? Second of all, there's talks about capping the amount of debt that they would forgive, and I believe President Obama said, I think he was looking at $50,000, so that means they're not going to forgive everything up to $50,000, and then there's also talk that that might be taxable as income. So what I tell people to do is do not borrow any more than you need. And typically when I'm counseling students, if they come into my office and they borrow up to the cost of, they borrow what they need, okay? And then they come in mid-season and ask me for additional money, what I do is I take them through the loan repayment calculator, and I say, here's the $10,000 that you want to borrow. This is how much it is going to cost you. Do you really need the $10,000? And when students see actually how much it's going to cost them, so that $10,000 is going to cost you $14,000 or $15,000 in the long run, do you really need the $10,000? So I always say, work with your financial aid folks and make smart choices about borrowing if you have to. Okay. Now I know a lot of students will borrow heavily in the first year, and then because they haven't gotten ahead of the game and looked for outside funding sources and stuff, they don't figure that out until later, and then they utilize their second year either through grad assistant, teaching assistantships, or outside funding sources where they have a lot of that paid for. So some of the people will be in heavy loans for their first year, and in their second year they get a lot of aid. Okay, and so that happens. And I think, let's see, on to the next page. Okay. Okay, and here's my information, and I guess we'll open. The other thing is I tell people to do is this, is whatever school you really, really want to go to, talk with folks, talk with them. They can provide you, so I have scholarships that you probably don't know about. So I have a scholarship for a Canadian nurse. I have a scholarship for a male of Greek descent. I have scholarships for people that went to school in Vermont. I have a scholarship for someone who's from Iowa. So these are scholarships that you're probably thinking, why the hell would they give me a scholarship for that? But because I work in the business, I know these things. So work with the individuals in the financial aid office that you're interested in, and become their best friend, because they can provide you help. So what I typically tell people is, if students come into my office thinking, and this is incorrectly thinking, that I am going to provide them with 100% financing, that's at the master's level, that is probably not going to happen. So we need to first of all manage expectations. I tell people, let's meet halfway. You come up with some funding on your own, whether it be through your personal resources, through outside funding or whatever, and I'll try to help cap it off with institutional funding, okay? But if you don't want to meet me halfway and your expectations are that I'm supposed to provide you with 100% financing, that's probably not going to happen. The other thing, and you do this politely, is once you get your financial aid package, if there's still a gap, let the financial aid office know and be polite about it and say, can you keep my file open in case you see something? So what happens is this: is in the first round, sometimes we miss some things, or we don't catch all the fine details and stuff. if you ask for a reconsideration, and I'm not saying you should do this all the time, but you can ask for a reconsideration. And then what I do is I look at your application with a fine-tooth comb, and I look for those detailed characteristics about you where you might be the Canadian nurse or the male of Greek descent or other things where it's not going to naturally come out of a process where we're looking at thousands and thousands of applications. And those details are not going to come out in the initial wave of financial aid, but they may come out later if I look at it with a fine-tooth comb. And then also, as money becomes available, I know you're in my pile of reconsideration, so it's like, okay, as money becomes available, I'll try to provide you with that. And money can become available all the way up to the start of classes, and including sometimes, but before the add drop period. So, keep on their radar and see what they can do to provide some help with you. Okay, so I think that's it. So if people have questions, I'll take questions now.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was fantastic. A lot of people are asking if they'll get the slides, and I just want to say that yes, an archive recording of this webinar along with a copy of the slides will be available on the ASPPH website, and you'll all registrants will get a follow-up email to that. First question, if you plan to attend graduate school in the fall of 2017, when should you apply for graduate school as well as for scholarships?
Okay, so as I mentioned, typically deadline dates for admissions vary, but typically it's December or January, and then in some cases people have rolling after that based on space availability. The issue with outside funding sources, their deadline dates are September, October, November, and December. So you really need to, we're already in the end of October, so you really need to start looking for outside funding sources now while you're getting your admissions application materials together. So you really need to do it now.
Great, thank you. Another question, if there is an outside funding source found on a particular institution's website, can it be applied to another institution?
Absolutely. Outside funding sources are not proprietary. And that's why I went through and I showed you the link to that one, and we had all the schools of public health send me their outside funding source links, and I had a grad student consolidate into one comprehensive list. They don't care which school you go to. Those are outside funding sources. The only ones that are institution specific are the institutional aid that's offered, and that's a different part of the website. You'll see it says institutional aid and then outside funding source. Institutional aid is only available to those students who are applied, admitted, and accepted into that institution.
Great. The next question, this one applies, if you're applying for a grant to fund your research, how does that cover the cost of your tuition?
Okay, so it depends on how the grant is defined. In some cases, the grant can be a stipend, okay? In other cases, it's a check that comes directly to you, and you can use it for whatever you want. I know with the research grants to some of our faculty, in some cases there's a tuition component and a stipend component. So like I said, it depends on how that grant is defined. But if it's tuition, it'll go towards your tuition, and in some cases, the grants go directly to the institution initially to cover the cost. In other cases, like a stipend, it will come to you. So yeah, it depends on how the grant is defined.
Okay, great, thank you. A few people have asked, while this webinar is targeted toward U.S. students, do you have any advice for international students applying to U.S. graduate schools?
One thing I say for international students is I apologize. I do wish we could do more for you. So typically, what I told you at the beginning that we give out financial aid based on 3 factors: need, merit, and mission. So obviously, we can't determine need for international students because there's no equivalent to a FAFSA. Although I have to say that if you're from Canada, if you're a Canadian citizen, there is a kind of like equivalent to a FAFSA information or tax information. So for Canadian students, we actually do determine need. But international students are still eligible for merit and mission-based aid. So at least you have those 2 options. The one thing that I have done is because I realize how difficult it is for international students, what we do is we survey every year the incoming graduate schools, so not just the School of Public Health, but the business school, the law school, the medical school. We survey all the international students who are coming in, and we have about a 20% or so, 20-25% international students. And what we do is ask them how they are financing their education. And then what we do is we come up with a list. So it has some generic things that are not country specific, and then we've divided it into countries. Now that's obviously not 100% comprehensive. But there's a lot of things for China, India, Canada, some of the areas where we get a lot of our students. And we send that out to international students so they can use that as a kind of guide that this is where your predecessors got funding to help them come into to school here. So this might provide you with some insights as well. And I believe I sent that to you guys, so it will be going to the international students or whoever wants it. Like I said, I apologize it's not as comprehensive as I'd like it, but it gives you some idea of where to look for things. The other thing is, once again, with international students, start the process early. And then, have a negotiation with the institution if you need to, with the understanding that you probably will not get 100% financing. So like I said, I always try to manage expectations. Don't go into someone's office saying you're demanding 100% financing, because they're probably going to laugh at you. You really need to say, okay, how can we make this work? This is what I think I can contribute. This is what I think I'm going to need in terms of help.
Thank you. It sounds like those are typical advice to start the process early and to be flexible and put forth what you can do as well. One person asked, is there a typical or average financial aid package, and what does it look like?
So it depends on the institution. So it's really institution dependent. So for instance, here at Columbia, we're one of the few institutions that actually provide need-based aid. Many institutions will only provide merit-based aid. Okay, so it really depends on the institution. I can tell you here at Columbia, I don't know how it works every place else, but our tuition is about $35,000 a year, and we get our average packages are anywhere from 10 or 15,000 to about 30,000. Okay, so it really depends on what I try to do is if you have merit and need, we try to double up for you. Okay, but I would say, at most like I said, at most institutions, it's gonna be if you get 50% covered, that's actually pretty good.
Great. Okay. This person asked, should I be concerned or alarmed by scholarship opportunities offered by law firms and the like? They sometimes appear to be a bit sketchy to me. What do you have?
Scholarships offered by law firms. I guess I'm not familiar with all of that stuff. Anytime they require you to put money down, I would be very skeptical about that. What you can do is you can also, I'm more than, well, if you want to email me, you have my email. If you email me the link, I can take a quick look at it and give you what I think about it. But I would say stick with the ones that are on the institution's website, okay? And the ones that I provided you, I can guarantee you there's more than enough to look at with what I've provided you. This will keep you busy till at least December or January of next year. So I would stick with the institutional, where the institution has them advertised, rather than just kind of doing a search on the web, because I know I've looked at some of those things, and anytime they start asking you for too much personal information or ask you to put down a deposit on things, I say, no, I'm not giving you money in the hopes that I might get something. So I'd be leery about that. The other thing, when you're looking for outside funding sources, I always recommend that you have a template essay ready, okay? Because a lot of cases they're asking you the basics, the same basic questions. You just have to change some of the names and stuff in it. And also, if you could have a couple of standby recommenders who are willing to write your letter of recommendation, and they can have a template ready too. Write your letter of recommendation, because what you don't want to do is, let's say for instance there's a $10,000 scholarship that you find on the website someplace, and the deadline date is next Friday. And it's like, oh, I'm busy, I can't do it. So if you have those things in place, the template, personal statement, and a couple of standby recommenders, then you can't use that as an excuse that you don't have enough time to, okay? So, yeah.
Great. This person asks, how early does the FAFSA have to be filed for a student seeking admission in the fall of 2018?
The FAFSA has to be done on a yearly basis. So this year was the first, so normally the FAFSA was available right after the beginning of the year, so in January. This year was the first year, and this was primarily for undergrads and stuff, to help them take early advantage of things. The FAFSA was available at the beginning of October. So my guess is the FAFSA for 2018 will be, if everything goes, because remember, it's the government doing this. We don't know what's happening with the government until after the election. But I'm hoping that next year in early October, the FAFSA will be available to file for fall 2018.
Great. Do you have any additional advice for those applying for doctoral programs and hoping to get 4 to 5 years of funding?
Okay, so doctoral programs, like I said, are typically very competitive. If you get in, you will be taken care of in a lot of cases. So let me tell you a little bit about the doctoral process. The doctoral process has no rhyme or reason, okay? I have seen people with 4.0s and excellent GRE scores that did not get into Columbia. And it's not because we didn't want them academically, it's in a lot of cases because their research interests didn't match what we had to offer, okay? So it's all really about research fit at the doctoral level. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you do your research ahead of time and then get your application in, okay? Now, I recommend that you reach out to professors at the institution, professors that you would like to work with. In fact, I talked to someone today who was rejected from our program from last year, and she was trying to get some tips for this year. And I said, you really, because at the doctoral level, we only interview our top candidates, that unless you create a face and a name for yourself, you're just an application, okay? So I said the way to do that is you have to do it politely. So first of all, make sure you do your research so you know about this professor before you reach out to them. In some cases, there are what we call gatekeepers. So in our particular case, we have department coordinators. So I'm having her go through the department coordinator to contact a particular professor. And the reason I do that is because with the professors, they tend to be busy, okay? And if they're really expert researchers, in this particular case, the person she was looking for, I believe, is doing research right now in another country, okay? So he's physically not here to be able to get in contact with. So you have that. The other thing that you have is in some cases, the deadline date for a major grant they're writing is another week away. So it's like they're not going to have time to talk to a potential student. So that's why I say sometimes it's good to go through the gatekeeper at the institution. It could be the department coordinator or whatever. They can provide you with some insights as to when is a good time to approach that individual, or that individual is going to be busy on sabbatical or whatever, so I would wait, or I would talk to this other individual who's working on similar research. So try to do those things, but make sure you've read some of their work beforehand. That at least puts a face in front of it. The other thing about the process at the doctoral level is that, so for instance, we have 400 applications for about 30 spots. So in some cases, it depends on how many current students are working with professors. So if you have a research interest with a professor that already has 10 students that they're mentoring, then until they graduate and fall out of there, they're not going to take any more. So in 1 year we may accept 3 students, and in another year we may accept 10 students, just because of how many people are in the pipeline and stuff like that. So that's why I said at the doctoral level, it's really crazy in terms of the admissions process, but that's why if you get in, typically an institution will take care of you. Now, I also have to caution you, you will have to give us something back. So typically you will be doing research with the professor, okay, doing the data collection, all the dirty work for them, okay, or you will be doing a teaching assistantship or both. So you might be teaching, you might be doing research, or both. So you will have to work for that free money we're going to give you. And then people always ask, well, but what if I want to go part-time? I always tell people, if you are getting 100% financing. We are going to cough up all the money for you. The expectation is that you are going to give 100% to us, which means you are not going to be working. Okay? So if you're thinking of a part-time program, doctoral program, typically those are not funded. So we typically get part-time folks to our DRPH program, and they typically come from the New York City Department of Health. But the New York City Department of Health will pay for their tuition up to a certain number of credits per semester. I believe it's like 6 credits per semester. So it takes a little longer for them to finish the degree, but their outside organization is going to pay for it rather than the expectation that the institution will finance it.
Great, thank you. And then just for clarification purposes, a few people asked if that applies to both DRPH and PhD programs.
They want to apply to both?
Just that approach and the admissions process.
The approach, yes. The approach is for both of those. Like I said, some of the DRPH programs, because you go part-time, and the DRPH programs typically require an MPH or equivalent. Typically, the DRPH programs are more application-based research, whereas the PhD are more academic. Because the DRPH is application-based research, a lot of the folks at least come into our program are working practitioners. So they're not going to come into the program full-time, and therefore there isn't the level of funding that there would be for a PhD program. Now, some of our students do come into the DRPH full-time, and that's fine, and then we try to make sure that we max out their funding for them at that point.
Great. We've had a few questions about the FAFSA. A few people have asked, is it program specific? Do you need to know what school you're going to when you complete it? Also, if you are no longer dependent on your parents' income tax return, do you have to file their information on the FAFSA?
Sure.
A lot
Okay.
Of FAFSA
So
questions.
the FAFSA, what you do is each institution has an institution code, and that allows then the government, after they run your numbers through and determine your estimated family contribution, that allows that FAFSA information for the institution to have access to that. So you do need to know the institution codes, and that's on everybody's website. You can put as many as you want. So the FAFSA can go to as many schools as you want. I think in SOFAS they said there's 3.2 is the average number of schools that you apply to. So yeah, if you're applying to 3, if you're applying to 6, make sure you put the institution code for all of those schools so that the FAFSA information can go to all of them. Once you are in graduate school, you are considered independent, so you do not have to put down your parents' information. Your need-based aid will be based on your financial information, not on your parents. Now, a couple of things with that. So there are certain government grants that will ask us for parent information. So the Scholarship for Disadvantaged Students, there are certain government guidelines for that, and they're very rigid about that. And they ask us for parent information, and we have to provide it to the government in aggregate, not individual. So in some cases, they may come back and ask for your parents' information, but that does not determine your need, okay? It just, if for outside funding sources, sometimes they request that. The other thing that sometimes is an issue with us is if you come to us and you have zero income, and we ask, okay, wait a second, zero income, how did you survive for the last year? You obviously had either lived with your parents or got some sort of funding. We take that into account, but we realize that, you know, zero income is kind of an anomaly because you got to be making something in order to eat and have a roof over your head, but you will be independent. You will be independent as a graduate student.
Thank you. Are there limits to how many or what type of aid sources you can apply to or receive?
Overseas?
Or receive. Receive.
Oh, no. No, you can apply to, I'll give you an example. There is a high school in the middle of the Midwest. They are not a Bronx Science or a Stuyvesant. Those are some of the famous high schools here in New York State. They bring in more money for their senior class to go to college than any other high school in the country. And I would say there's about 300 seniors in the graduating class. And it's primarily because the faculty members and the administrators push those kids to apply for outside funding sources. Each one of those kids, each one of those 300 kids applies to no less than 40 different outside funding sources, and they bring in millions. So that kind of gives you an idea. Apply to as many as you want, okay? But you're probably going to have to apply to more than one or two in order to get the funding you need. So, you know, that's why I say it's 15 minutes a day. It's assistance from friends who can help you with this process. But like I said, when it comes down to it, the difference between your top choice school and your second choice school is going to be between $15,000 and $30,000. And I say, how badly do you want to go to your top choice school?
Great. Looks like we have time for a few more questions. A few people have asked if grants or scholarships are available or funding for those who are part-time students and also for those looking to enroll in a certificate program.
Okay, so typically funding is for degree granting programs only. That's typically, okay? And typically if you are going part-time, what we do here at Columbia is we prorate the award. So if we're giving out $10,000 for a full-time student, which is 12 or more credits, if you're only going to take 6 credits, we'll reduce that. We'll prorate it to $5,000 for someone on 6 credits. Okay? Not every institution does that. We tend to do it because, like I said, I try to help my students out as much as possible. Some students, the awards are based only on full-time status. Also, when you're looking for outside funding sources, in some cases, they do have that full-time status requirement.
Great. Okay, is there an advantage of school-funded grants or scholarships versus outside funding?
No, money is money. Money is money.
Right on.
Yeah, I'll take it from anyone who wants to give it to me. Like I said, too proud to beg. Not be too proud to beg. If you want to go to your top choice school, let people know you need the money.
Great. Do you have any advice for non-traditional students or so students returning to school after a time break or those with families? So children
when I showed
specifically.
you the personal characteristic ones, in a lot of cases they're looking for non-traditional students and people with families and other things like that. So I would look at that site, how you define yourself, because you are not the traditional student. So I know there are outside organizations that are willing to finance folks because they feel that you're already established either in your career or with a family, and that the fact that you're willing to make this sacrifice and get your degree shows high level of motivation and those types of things. So yes, I would do that. I would also, if you, like I said before, if you are working or if your spouse is working, check and see if they have any tuition remission benefits, okay? And like I said, don't always look for what's on the books. Go talk to someone. Talk to someone, convince them that you are worth the investment.
Great. So along the same lines, who should you talk to at a school if that you apply to see if they offer a matching scholarship for AmeriCorps alumni or something specific like that?
In our particular case, you could talk to anyone in financial aid. Yeah. And there are a lot of those things that match for Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Gates, the whole 9 yards, yeah. So I would talk to any of the financial aid professionals at your institution. In many cases, because those are kind of like the common programs, we automatically do it. You don't even have to ask for it. You know, if it's on your application that you're in one of those things, and in some cases we ask those questions specifically. They're typically supplemental questions on an application, and just make sure you answer them correctly, and then we automatically give it to you. We also, I mean, in our particular case, we have summer programs, and we automatically give a $10,000 scholarship to people who are in our summer pipeline programs. The fact that they've come to our program and now have applied for a master's degree, we want to make sure that we take some of the costs paid out of it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us, Dr. Korevec, today. It looks like we are out of time, but we didn't get to a few questions, so if they could follow up, you have Dr. Korevec's information and also the webinars at ASPPH.org if you have any specific questions that you didn't get answered. The archived recording of this webinar along with the PowerPoint slides will be available on the event page later this week. I will also send an email out to all those who registered with this link. And just so you know, a few upcoming webinars of note that may be of interest to those. The Public Health Associate Program and Best Fit Candidate Model Overview will talk about a very exclusive program for those with an undergraduate or graduate degree in public health or just interested in it. So I highly recommend that. And you can find out more information on the events page at ASPPH.org. And we also have the Undergraduate Summit and the annual meeting coming up in March. Thank you again, Dr. Korevec. Oh, go ahead.
Let me mention one more thing. For those folks who might be in Denver this next week, we have APHA, and everybody who has anything to do with public health will be there, including myself. So if you happen to be in the Denver area, starting on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I believe Wednesday is the college day, Wednesday in the morning, feel free to stop by the booth.
Wonderful, and ASPPH will be there as well. Thanks again, and have a great afternoon and evening.